back again. And, baking is for the summers because growing up son, as a son growing up in our home, my son loved, the special treats I made for him, bought for him, but once in a week. Otherwise, croissants and everything get expensive, to do daily. So baking and cooking really take you far in life. I mean, one package of all-purpose flour, some eggs, and some baking powder, and the rest. Butter, of course, a little bit of butter. Easy on the butter because, of course, calories. But if you're burning, then butter is not so bad. So it's a fatty acid, right? So anyway, so I was thinking in America, this lady Elaine Smith, who was our manager, apartment complex manager, in her early 40s, had given me all these to die for recipes, and she used to say vanilla, not vanilla. Beg your pardon. So vanilla. So the van's ready. Van of school van of kids for baking. Okay, vanilla in America, but in Canada, they're even more eager. They say vanilla, van. And, in India, they would say it's all vanilla extract here. India, they would say essence. So, if you get down to it, we extract the best from the people in Canada. But in India, they look for the essence of the personality or the, character. So there's a little bit of difference there. Anyways, so moving on to psychology. Once again, I have no background in psychology beyond the odd essay, newspaper essay in particular, which I've read. I've not even looked for it in a magazine. All right, so sense and sensibility. So which part of the brain activates when I'm reading sensibility? Or sorry, sense, when I'm reading sense. So this is sensibility to, I guess, a nutrition expert, right? Because then then the lady can kind of catch her parameter. So good fats, bad fats. After I have to read slowly. Am I going to be observing simultaneously and reading? And that may be hard. All right. So let's see if I can do this experiment. So which brain? So the frontal lobe is here, the temporal and parietal lobe at the back, the hippocampus at the back. And here, so let's see. So here, all right. So good fats, bad fats. Some types of fat confer important health benefits. In recent years, countless words have been written about fat, how much we need, and which types are good or bad fats. It's not enough to know which foods are high or low in the fat. Now we also need to identify the different kind of less contained in various foods and to understand why some are good for us while others pose serious health risks. This portion is getting highlighted. The frontal lobe. All right, so this is getting highlighted. The frontal lobe is, I forgot. You forgot. I'm not a psychology expert. So quickly, frontal lobe is in the front of the brain. And what is it for? The way you think, how you move, and how you remember things. So that's what the frontal lobe does. So let's look at sensibility. So the way you think, so that figures, all right. So it's interesting me in my thinking power as far as my thinking power goes. So this is sensibility. Would you believe it? Ali Hazelwood has a PhD in neurosciences, or it's same as the president of the University of Toronto, Professor Emma Wooden. So, all right, Ali Hazelwood. I had to look for something which is, which reminds me of my own graduate school days, graduate and chemical engineering school days, and those were the days when I remember I gave my first academic talk in my second semester, a chemical reaction engineering. And, had gone to great trouble, really, a lot of reference, all right, engineering library. and I was doing three courses. My first semester had not gone as well as it should have because I had had a break in my career, right? Being married to a PhD student of computer science. And then I came here and took up C programming and audited a math department, ordinary differential equations math course. But I even turned in the exam for the course, and I think I've asked even now for this professor to evaluate my exam. And and as far as I can tell, it was from reports, bits and pieces picked up here. I may have passed the course, gotten a B, but one exam answer came from book's reference. All right, so all I had to do was adapt the solution. But that's a lot. It's not copying. That's a legit procedure in graduate chemical engineering school. Because I run into this guy, and in the library, and he's also looking both of us looking up answers. So that guy brings back good memories. I never even found out his name. He didn't know my name. We used to sit in the class, and we just moment of laughter, burst out laughing, because we're looking for answers for the exam. Anyways, so the frontal lobe is hurting. My thinking power. I'm talking like an airhead. My frontal lobe is hurting. Anyways, I got first semester. I didn't go well. I had not my finest hour in process acceptance course, to say the least, but I hope I've made up in recent times. And then the other two courses I managed. One was a deferred grade. Next semester I got a B minus. After he gave me a problem, no, none of these professors just reward you with grades. They make you work. So that's all. That's the fun of graduate, engineering school or graduate school in any area. And so the second semester I was all, enthusiastic. So I did a lot of reference and three courses again: chemical reaction engineering. Four professors were teaching. One was a lady professor, and my husband had made the slides. There was this Unix, word processing package, LaTeX. It gave the best letter. Simply beautiful, stunning script. Right. So if I wish you could get it back, no amount of Word, MS Word can produce LaTeX quality, of a script or font or script or font. So I thought I had done well. I was received well. The class was real. Come on, Professor Jane Phillips, very ambitious, she said, and nodded. And that cut me down to size. Somehow I felt really miserable. But so but anyways, but we're thinking, so here is Ali Hazelwood's heroine. They are talking about her first academic talk. So that is why I gave you this little introduction. I gave my first academic talk in my second semester of graduate school, and I took it very seriously. I memorized the entire speech, read it the PowerPoint 6 times, even agonized over the perfect outfit. I ended up dressing nicer than usual, and Annie, my graduate school best friend, had the well meaning but unfortunate idea to rope Levy in it to compliment me. Doesn't B look extra pretty today? It was probably the only topic of conversation she could think of. After all, Annie was always going on about how mysteriously handsome he was, with the dark hair and the broad shoulders and that interesting, unusual face of his. How she wished he would stop being so reserved and ask her out. So the frontal lobe and this portion, is it the parietal temporal? I'm going to look up. So and then it goes on, and these were all my professors. Hans, mysteriously handsome, dark hair, and some of them, were brunettes, and blonde was Professor Coachshot, I think, and the broad shoulders and the interesting, unusual face of it. So I should write about a professor, all right, doing research like us. in, when, begging for mark, makes you, they become all powerful once they become professors. So, anyway, so before I get sidetracked, all right, asides after. Frontal lobe is thinking capacity, and this is only the frontal lobe. Is there stuff about the temporal here? No, this is only about the frontal lobe. So frontal lobe I went through just now. You can look up and read a lot more. So there's emotions, personality, judgment, self-control, muscle control, and movement. So it could be related to the so this is a little different. Cerebrum, cerebellum, of course, emotion, balance, the different, I guess, muscle control and movement and everything. So this is psychology though, right? So it's a little different. And function, temporal memory, I guess memory is coming up. Hippocampus. So temporal law is a pair of areas on your brain's left and right sides. These areas, which are inside your skull near your temples and ears, play a role in managing your emotions, processing information from your senses, storing and retrieving memories, and understanding language. So I guess both of them were at play. So I was sort of thinking out concentrating. So I'm thinking, sort of, I guess, because I'm grasping what I'm reading. So that's kind of thinking, and not analyzing them because it's a storybook, and the temporal lobe I just read. So it's all good, and so it's quite interesting. And if you're interested in psychology, you could look up more and study books out there on psychology. And see, my husband's friend who owns a bookstore, he gave him the psychology of stupidity. And for my husband comes and you should read it, I should read it, and everything. And for a second there, I thought he was gifting it to me. And because in a way I'm stupid because I trust too much in people. I beg your pardon. That was not good. I beg your pardon. So I trust too much in the goodness of the world and that sort of thing. So much of naivety is a little foolish, I think. But in other ways, you have to learn things. Of course, you would be stupid unless you learn, right? I mean, so I have to give the book a read, but once I'm done with everything, all right, then I'm going to study the psychology of stupidity. Not too much. The psychology of intelligence would be good for me. I have to look it up. What makes what you could do to make yourself intelligent, thinking of things like, this is stupid, right? Painting, but it makes perfect sense. I mean, because it's in a naive way, it's right. Things could be righted if I were to draw blue pictures and the famous artists, paintings by famous artists, make them blue. I shared with you Leah irises and Monet's water lilies, all blues, and something else which was all blue. So lots of blues, then things could be righted. All right, because man was invented by God first, but God did not make woman first, man first. So there you go. So God's sexist, but or pragmatic, whichever way you view it. All right. Signing out, Gayatri B. Sitaram. Thank you.